Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avistech Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries, as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. We all know that growth bottlenecks are inevitable, but what separates thriving B2B startups from the rest is how they transition from founder-led to marketing-led growth. On today's StrategyCast, we sit down with Emily Maxie, Vice President of Marketing at Firm 360 and a B2B tech strategist who's mastered this shift 4 times over. Emily brings a strategic lens to the conversation, breaking down her marketing maturity audit and a 4x4 matrix for prioritizing urgency and impact. Expect real-world frameworks, actionable insights, and a playbook for scaling smarter, not just bigger.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Emily Maxie join the show today. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I tell you, I am so excited to roll up our sleeves and dive into this topic. It is amazing. We're going to be talking about transitioning from founder-led marketing to marketing-led growth. I mean, everyone's dealt with that, and there's nobody else better to talk about it than Emily. Before we get there, tell us a little bit more about your really cool journey.
Yeah, so I've been at B2B tech startups my entire career and have done this journey of transitioning from founder-led growth to marketing-led growth 4 times. And so it's something that that I enjoy a lot and that I'm really passionate about and interested to share with your audience. So yeah.
I tell you, you've got so many incredible insights here. And what is it? Why do you have a passion for early stage businesses?
Yeah, great question. I think there is so much broken with early stage companies in terms of marketing, where it really, I wouldn't say easy, but there's a lot of low hanging fruit, and it's easy to come in, make a significant impact, and to also really sort of define for the company that marketing is a revenue driver, not just sort of the
A
arts
cost
and crafts.
center. Yeah. I think it takes a special CEO who has the ear of everyone within the C-suite and, engineers, whoever they might be, to really make sure that it's very, very clear the value that he or she has surrounding marketing, because that doesn't always
100%. Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. You always start out with assessing the current state of the business as you're jumping in to really determine where it is that you can be successful and create the revenue. And you start with an audit of the landscape.
Yeah. So the first thing I do is a marketing maturity audit. I have just one slide that summarizes each of the key functions of marketing. And for each of the key functions, there's sort of a sub bullet, and each of those gets a ranking. And the reason it's really important for me to have it all on one slide is when you're doing these types of audits, it's easy to get in the weeds. It's easy to confuse your audience about what's working, what's not working. And so just making it really simple and then having that as an artifact that then as you mature different areas of the marketing function, you can go back to it and say, here's where we were, here's where we are now, here's where I think we will be in 6 months. And it's a really great place to start.
And what categories do you typically have on that audit?
I personally have demand gen as sort of a column, product marketing as a column, brand, and then customer marketing. And then sort of as a band at the bottom is content marketing that obviously impacts all of those things. So
yeah, that's a great place for most anyone to start. But of course, there can be different categories as well. But I
sure.
think these are probably the strongest basic ones. So then what you're doing is you're also auditing the vendor partnerships on a similar scale.
Yes. So often what I find with founder-led growth is they use the number of different vendors or agencies to sort of get where they are. And so I go through an audit process of those, defining the scope of services, which surprisingly, sometimes that's not well defined. The expected outcomes, what does success look like? And if that's not yet defined, working with that vendor to say, okay, here on out, we're going to be working toward outcomes. Let's decide what those are. And then ultimately doing an assessment of, I sort of do red, yellow, green for how I rate the vendors. And red would be, this is a brand damaging relationship. It's doing negative impact.
Not meeting deadlines, whatever it might be. Yeah.
Yeah. And yellow is we need more information. So maybe the vendor has not been held to KPIs before. And so you need to start establishing that and reviewing it. And then green is sort of looks good for now, but let's revisit in 6 months. Yeah. And so that's how I sort of start things out.
And then you take all that data and build a 4x4 matrix based on urgency and importance.
Yes. And so that's exactly right. There's so much to do when you're coming in as marketer number one, and it's easy to get distracted, especially if you have competitors who are doing all the things you wish that you were doing. And so figuring out what is the quickest path to revenue for your marketing efforts, and then how do you then use those wins to build the case for longer term investment.
A lot of this is a gap analysis, right?
Yes.
So how do you effectively communicate the gaps or the priorities to the rest of the team utilizing these sort of tools?
Yeah. So typically I meet with the CEO and the founder, sometimes the same person, sometimes different people. And I always, always, always focus on the good that has been built to this point, because if they have gotten to a point where it is interesting for me to work there, then they've been
doing a good job.
Right.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. And so really focusing on the positive, even though every time there is a lot of negative, a lot of things that need work, starting with the positive and really conveying the message that we're building on the shoulders of giants. These taking something from 0 to 1 is so difficult. Right. And so focusing on that and then using these tools, which I have found make it a lot less of an emotional conversation, because you're saying, look, here's the criteria I use to rate these things. Here's what, a 5 out of 5 looks like, and we're a 1 out of 5. And then getting feedback on that, because sometimes, from what you've seen in your first 30 days, it looks like a 1 out of 5, but then they say, oh, actually, there's this thing over here that I forgot to tell you about, and it's working really well. And and so sometimes that will happen of like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that. Let's change our rating. Or similar with vendors, what they're doing right now is this scope, and they're not very good at it, but they used to do this and they were really great at that. Yeah. And so just getting that feedback of sort of all of the historical knowledge.
Well, I'm sure that they appreciate that insight that you're providing them too, and it's just more working with them in a very hand in glove manner, which I think is really important with some of these early stage companies. So they don't think that you're, the iron fist coming down, right, and how you use a logo or something like that. So we've got the grid, we've got the 4 areas for the purposes of our discussion today. We're using product, demand gen, brand, and customer experience. How do you build out the tactics associated with each of those?
Yeah. So I look at the things that fall in that bucket of urgent and important and really look for low-hanging fruit. So there again, there's so much to do, but there are some things that you can do that will immediately have an impact. And sometimes it's revenue generation, but sometimes it's like the board really hates our LinkedIn page. Can you please make our LinkedIn page not suck? And then that's a win for the CEO with the board of like, this person can roll up their sleeves and they're doing things, they hear us. And so it's both figuring out what the quickest path to revenue is, and then also what are some of the like low hanging fruit that are just like important to the person,
Right.
and having that empathy of like you want to look like you work at a serious company, so yeah, let's beef up that LinkedIn page and make it look like you work in a serious company.
Well, and a lot of times, yeah, a tactic like that can be, taken care of in, less than a week. You know what I mean?
Right.
Less than
Absolutely.
24 hours. It can be really, really quick. But a
Hmm.
lot of times, a lot of the tactics that need to be deployed in order to meet the overall arching strategy, number one, take time, and number two,
Yes.
take money. So
Yes.
how are you explaining those two criteria to really get buy-in and understanding?
Yeah, I think using so first of all, it depends on whether or not you already have a system of record in place, a CRM, marketing automation, all of that. If you do, you are one step ahead. And being able to explain, just the timelines of these things. It takes this long to develop a campaign. It takes this long to generate leads from that campaign. It takes this long to close a lead. So if we start something today, that it's 6 months before we're going to see an impact. And trying to set those expectations of, yes, there are some things that can be done very quickly, and we're going to do those things quickly.
Right.
But a lot of things are a long play. And I think that's where having peers who have also been on this startup journey before, where it's not their first time, that is extremely beneficial because they're obviously I get that. I understand it's not a magic wand that just generates things. But that said, I've said it like a bunch of times already. But figuring out, how are they acquiring customers currently, double down on that thing so that you are being able to track the revenue impact of the things that you're doing, and while building those longer term plays.
Can you share some examples on how this, and we're going to get into the strategy that kind of is the linchpin to it all in a minute here, but really how this prioritization has helped drive measurable results?
Yeah. So at my last company, prioritizing in this way drove $1 million in revenue in the first 12 months, which may not sound like a lot, but they had zero marketing
Hey,
to date. They were completely founder led in terms of their
yeah,
sales.
I think that's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, it was a really awesome milestone. And then definitely gave the credibility to marketing of, we are a revenue driver, and this is why we're asking for this budget. This is what we'll do with it. And this is what we can expect to get back. And then at my current company, Firm 360, we increased sales qualified leads by 40% in the first six months. So I'm still, I started in May, so still within my first year. So there's a lot of things that are still coming to fruition in terms of that lead time, but the early indicators are that we're driving revenue, and that's what I really care about.
And that's what it's all about. I mean, and that's
And
just, marketers, comms directors, PR directors. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's all to manage perception, create awareness, and drive revenue at the end of the
yeah.
day. So you've got this lay of the land, and now what you're going to do is really kind of back in what the strategy is in
Mhm.
order to achieve all that. Um, where do you start? What do you do?
Yeah, I think developing a really deep understanding of customers and their needs. All of this is sort of marketing 101, but it's so important. And so many marketers don't get on the phone with customers, don't get on the phone with prospects, don't review sales calls. And just like building that muscle where every week I listen to a sales call and every week I get on a call with a customer, and building that muscle is so important. And I think when you fail to do that is when you get sort of out over your skis and you create a strategy that may not resonate with your target market or is just out of touch.
Right.
And so that's always step number one. And then layering in that customer and market intelligence with the things you've learned about the business to figure out, exactly what you want your strategy to be.
How do you align? There's so many cross-functional teams within organizations. How do you align them when you're developing the marketing strategy to really even get buy-in and in some situations, understand how much they care or don't care about what you're working on?
Yeah. First of all, it's all about personal relationships and really developing a deep understanding of that person's discipline, especially if they've been there for, since the founding of the company. They have so much knowledge about the industry and about the company and things like that. And coming in and being respectful of that and not coming in and saying like, I know everything and I'm going to change everything. And so I think that's a big piece of it. One thing that we do at Firm 360 that I haven't done before, but I love, is we do this exercise during strategic planning called Give Get. And so each department sort of presents, this is what I plan to achieve this year. And then for each functional area, you say, I'm prepared to give this to sales, to product, to engineering to help you achieve your goals. And I need from you this.
That's fantastic.
It's great. And then once you have sort of all of those things mapped out, then you have discussions around, well, I don't have the resources to give this to engineering and give this to product and give this to sales. So what are the things that are most important? And, do we have unrealistic goals when you look at them all in aggregate? And, it's a really great way to create alignment. And so that's something new that I really love.
I love that. I mean, that's good for anybody out there.
Yeah.
That's even good in the household, quite
I
frankly.
know.
I love it. So you tell us about the campaign around machine learning that you implemented.
Yeah. So at my last company, IoT consulting company, when I first started, they really believed that their machine learning team was their big differentiator. And at that point, so look at 2017, 2018, machine learning wasn't something widely understood by non-technical people. And so the first thing I did was just dive in deep to understand what it is, how we're different than our competitors, why a customer would care, all of these things. And I sat next to our head of data science, and we would have an hour every day where he had a whiteboard and he's going through, here's large language models and here's how data is related to each other and all of these things. And importantly, I did homework between those sessions to make sure I'm coming, with questions that I can't just Google. These are questions that are like advanced enough to be respectful of the subject matter. And we created this really high quality campaign that we were all really proud of. What ended up happening with that one is we misread the market readiness for that service. So we were early. If you were to launch a service that was doing machine learning for IoT today, people are familiar with AI. People are becoming much more literate on what machine learning is. And I think it would be a completely different ballgame, but that wasn't the state of things at that point. And so I learned a lot during that process because I had talked a lot to engineering. I'd talked a lot to sales, but had not talked a lot to customers. And so having that strong feedback loop with customers is now a vital piece of any campaign that I do. And also doing small tests instead of just like, heads down, building this amazing campaign and then voila, releasing it to the market, doing small tests that are inexpensive and that sort of gauge where the market is on a particular topic and how you're approaching it. So yeah, I learned a lot. We pivoted when things weren't working and ended up finding a service area that really shined stone.
And they both,
Yeah, they really shined
yeah.
stone. I think the really important thing about that whole experience is that failure isn't final. It just gives you the opportunity to pivot and learn and grow. And so that was that campaign.
Well, what I love about it is that you took the time to learn the technology, which is also building incredible trust with your coworkers, right? Like she really cares about this. You developed a go-to-market strategy that was very, very fruitful and worked. You test and scaled along the way. You took baby steps and then ran, which is important. And you had the KPIs that generated all of that revenue. And that's where I think a lot of people forget the test and scale piece of it. They just go and they go so big that they're not giving themselves time to gain the insights needed to augment and then run. What advice do you have for people who have that propensity or just that need to run first?
I think it's just the advice I would give to my former self is don't don't run. Yeah, and you can run smartly.
Right.
You can run with data. And so just view each of those sprints of learning as that running. And it's almost the training that you need to do in order to be ready to run a marathon. You don't just wake up and run a marathon. You have a training plan. And this is that training plan that prepares you to do that big thing.
To get there.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges? You've mentioned a few, but what are some of the biggest challenges that you experience along the way?
Was marketing in general or
just like maybe, is there initial resistance, how you would handle that? Or, people expecting an ROI too soon, how you manage that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things with companies that I joined, and it's because of the stage that they're in, is a misunderstanding about what marketing even is. And if you ask each person on the team what is marketing, you're going to get just as many different answers as you have people on the team. And so I think setting clear expectations, really important. And then doing something that I think a lot of marketers are uncomfortable with or not great at, which is marketing. And
good insight there. Yeah. Always got to be selling
celebrating wins.
Yeah.
Communicating what you're doing. Because if you just go head down and do great work and no one knows what's going on, then the end of the year comes and you're asking for more money and they're sort of like, well, why? Things just sort of work. And you're like, really, here's what's going on behind the scenes. And so I think education on what marketing is, what great marketing is, not just there are a lot of things that fall in the bucket of marketing, but what marketing looks like in your version of marketing is important. And I think that eagerness to get to ROI factor is something that everyone has. I have it. I launched a campaign and I'm getting refreshed and I'm like, I just launched this. Why isn't it, revenue positive by now? And so I think setting clear expectations with your CEO, with your board, with yourself, this is when we can expect to have results. And I document that every time I launch a campaign. I have a document of this is what I expect this campaign to do, because then you forget. You forget what you said you were going to do or what the impact was supposed to be. And this is when I expect to have those results. And then I set myself a reminder to then follow up at that date and report out on those results. So, yeah.
So with our clients, we have a weekly on deck, the day of the week changes and we're just going through, all the deliverables, 5 days and 10 days out. And we also have an impact area within the on deck that just talks about just a few different areas that are really, really going well, and then a couple others that we might need to shore up. But
Mhm.
then we always want them to have information on what they can be doing to sell marketing. And
Mm.
then every quarter we have a focus meeting where we are just diving into all of the KPIs, and they're so profound and everything is going so well for this client, but she's not promoting it internally enough. So marketing, the CEO definitely knows that marketing isn't an issue. This particular client, I should have said this up front, is up a point and a half year over year customer count. The industry's flat, but they budgeted 2.5. So there's that gap.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. There's tough discussions that are being, taken internally. So anyways, had we equipped this client with better KPIs along the way, she would have been in a position to, quite frankly, ask for even more money because they're
Yeah.
underspending by 2 points as well compared to the
Oh,
so there's
okay.
all these things that keep on coming up. So again, we've got these focus meetings, the weekly KPIs, which have been on the table for a long time, but it's really going to help her understand the impact that marketing's making. So my
Mhm.
advice with that very, very long-winded story is, have impact measured. Call it impact.
Mhm.
Don't call it
Yeah.
a KPI. KPI, is what the impact results. The impact results from the KPI. And
Yeah.
that's what we have to sell, is how we're affecting top line, bottom line, revenue, profitability, customer count,
Mhm.
client acquisition, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I think storytelling is a really underutilized
I agree.
tool in that. The
Internally
words
and
you use,
externally.
yeah, the
Yeah.
words you use matter, like impact versus KPI. Who cares about a KPI? But
Um,
everyone cares about impact, you
yeah,
know?
I
The
totally
words you
agree.
use matter.
So what is one of the biggest lessons that you've learned along your journey, and what advice do you have? Oh, actually, I'm going to tee that question up a little bit differently for you in a minute.
Okay.
But what lessons have you learned with this journey of yours?
I think it's really important to understand an organization's capacity to absorb change.
Mm,
So you're coming in as a new marketer to the team and you want to have impact right away. And I think understanding that people, maybe they're ready for it, maybe they're not. Maybe there's some areas where there's more sort of appetite for change than others. That's something that I've learned over the years. And when I was first on this journey, starting out, I'm like, here's all the things, and we're going to do them all in Q1, and this is going to be the
yeah,
impact.
that happens. Yeah.
And here we go.
Yeah.
And realizing that, back to the give get, that there are things I need from people on that team, and they may be completely maxed out and unable to give those things. And
Right.
so I think being patient with people and bringing them along for the journey, it can be overwhelming to just sort of like throw a marketing plan at someone who doesn't know a lot about marketing. And then just like beating the drum, saying the same thing again and again and again in a similar way so that the message gets through.
Yeah.
All of those things are things that sort of I wish I would tell my younger self.
Yeah, well, I love that advice. It's very, very sound. And I'm going to have another question for you here. We've got a theme on the show that we launched the first week of January. It's called Better At. And we're always striving to be better at something. But the soft skills that get us there are what are so important, like listening, compassion, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
So given our topic today, what advice do you have for the marketers listening to become better at blank so that they can really implement what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think setting realistic expectations and then managing through those expectations is the the biggest, especially when you're starting a new role.
Right.
Um, the other thing I'd say is get really curious about the business and
Uh,
about the industry, about the customers. Just like go all in, dive
Right.
all in. So
I love that curiosity, because the curiosity, I think, is what really stands the test of time.
mhm.
And yeah, I've been at this a long time, 35 years. And it's that curiosity that has kept me interested. It's kept me relevant. And without that, you don't have client retention. You don't become, you're not with companies long, because you constantly do need to learn and be
Yeah.
inquisitive.
Yeah. Yeah. And take ownership of your own learning journey. Don't expect it to be spoon fed to you, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, this has been an incredible conversation today. I can't believe that we already have to sign off. Any final words for our listeners today, and what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Um, Final words for listeners, just keep learning. You're listening to this podcast, so that's a great start. And listeners can find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Emily Maxie on the internet currently. There's
For you.
so just Google Emily Maxie. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and yeah, I'd love to get that.
That's great. And if you'd like to get a hold of me, you can email me, Lori, Lori, at StrategyCast.com, and visit, if you would, StrategyCast.com, and sign up for our newsletter there as well. Emily Maxie, the one and only Emily Maxie on LinkedIn, thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast.
Thank you, Lori.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.